My name is Dana Inkster, and I'm the publisher of Lethbridge Living Magazine. And on this episode of Lethbridge Living, we're going to talk to Charleen Davidson from the Lethbridge and Southwestern Alberta Community Foundation. We're going to have some laughs with John Pogorzelski from Good Times, and also we'll chat with Rick Andrews, and he's going to tell us about the wildlife in the river bottom corridor. So this is Lethbridge Living. Well, Charleen, thank you. Welcome to Lethbridge Living. This is our video adaptation for our spring issue. So I'm so happy that you could come in and represent the Community Foundation. So, what is it that you do at the Community Foundation?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Second, the Community Foundation of Lethbridge and Southwestern Alberta was established 53 years ago. Donors establish funds with us, support our work, and leave gifts to us that will support the community of Southwestern Alberta. We work primarily with endowment funds. The money is invested, and the investment income goes back into the community in the form of grants.
Neat. So speaking of endowment funds, Lethbridge Living just started an endowment fund. If you could represent the Community Foundation to explain what that will do.
So a charity that establishes its own endowment fund, that money will always come back to that charity in perpetuity because we work with endowments. The initial gift remains invested forever. Again, the investment income goes back out into the community. So if it's a designated fund, which is what the Lethbridge Living Fund is, it's designated to support the work of the Lethbridge Living Magazine, that money will always come back to the Lethbridge Living Magazine to support its work.
I think that's what inspired me when I learned about the work that you do, and my ambition is that Lethbridge Living Magazine will be a magazine that actually gives back to the community through grants and whatnot. So I'm really grateful for all the amazing work that you do. What do you think? My main question to you: what is the most special thing about Lethbridge as a community from the chair that you sit in every day?
Oh gosh, the generosity of the people, whether it's through charitable giving or giving of their time to serve on boards and committees and just volunteering that time. Lethbridge is, we're still under 100,000, but we're getting closer. Census is on. Make sure you count yourself in. My plug for the city. But we look at our community and we really come together. We support our community so well, not just Lethbridge, but Southwestern Alberta. Lethbridge itself is, per capita, one of the most charitable cities in the whole country of Canada. That's impressive. That's something to be proud of, so proud of.
I think that's one of the main things. The philanthropic spirit of the community is really exceptional, and we should celebrate that. And so many generous people. If you could tell me a little bit, you said that the Community Foundation was started in 1953?
No, we're 53.
You are 53 years old.
We began in around 1964 with the early days, and the idea was to establish an organization where donors could leave a bequest or could support the money without bureaucracy. So we are a CRA registered charity. Minimal bureaucracy. We have a small office, strong team though, and donors can leave us money and we can help them achieve their charitable goals with that.
That's really amazing. One of the things, we do have a video that I know kind of paints out the picture, the step-by-step about how endowments work in particular. But tell us about some of your larger successes and programs and gifts, just so the community is aware.
I think our largest single gift was the Henry S. Varley Fund for Rural Life. So a rancher from Pincher Creek left us the bulk of his estate. And he established what we call a field of interest fund. He established that he wanted his fund to support projects that will enhance the quality of life in the rural community. So he left us a $4.5 million gift. That gift is endowed, it's invested, and it contributes just over $200,000 back into the community every year. Some of that goes out in scholarships. Because it was such a large gift, the community can apply for that. The rural community can apply for it. So that's the one restriction on it, is that it's for the rural community. charities in the rural community can apply for that gift and enhance quality of life in their own communities. So that's a pretty amazing gift, and that will impact the rural community throughout southwestern Alberta forever.
That's really amazing. The main thing that impresses me is, again, the generosity. But what do you feel people don't know about the work that the Community Foundation does? What would be a big
Misconception? Yeah. That our money comes from government. It does not. None of our money comes from government, which actually allows us to be a lot more flexible and responsive to the needs of our community. You know, we have just about $28 million invested right now. Approximately half of that is unrestricted, which allows us to accept applications from the community. But people just need to understand that anyone can contribute. And, you know, a lot of our gifts do come through bequests, but we have a lot of living donors who contribute today, and then they get to see their gift in action. They don't, you know, they don't wait until they're gone. They can leave additional when they pass away. They can leave us a gift in their will. But a lot of donors are very active with their funds, and they can determine where their gift goes.
I'm obviously very inspired by that. How can community get involved in other ways? Is it all about financial contributions?
It's totally not all about financial contributions. We have 9 committees and 1 board of directors, and we're always looking for really good, skilled people who are committed to the community, passionate about giving back to the community, to volunteer.
Thanks very much, Charleen.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Hello, John. Welcome to Lethbridge Living. Thanks so much for coming in. And I'm just delighted. Obviously, you and your community endeavor has been featured in our current issue of Lethbridge Living. So I was hoping you could just talk to our viewers a bit about comedy in Lethbridge and community.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, we have comedy in Lethbridge, which is fantastic. Not a lot of people even know it exists. They always think bigger cities, right? That's the only place where comedy exists. And we have quite a few local comedians in Lethbridge who are all working better, getting better every day, writing new jokes and producing laughs for the crowds that come out. I've been doing comedy now for about 4 years. Started here at a local place called The Owl. They run open mic nights there. It's a great place to go and learn. And now I moved on. I'm known as a good times comedian. Me and a few other guys, we have this little place down where we tell jokes to people and they come and laugh at our jokes. It's essential to have a room, because it's weird telling comedy out in the middle of the street to people. They don't really want to listen to you when you're just hollering at people walking by, listen to my jokes. So it's nice that we actually have a place that we can call home, where we can go practice our material, refine our bits, and we're actually bringing in headlining comedians that come across the country. So we've had guys from coast to coast, from Prince Edward Island to Vancouver, coming to Lethbridge, and it's a great thing to have. You know, people get out there, they get to see new types of comedy, new takes on, you know, traditional jokes. Everybody likes to joke about their wife. It's the easiest. I have to say,
My wife, please.
yeah, absolutely, right? My wife's from Mexico. I have a plethora of jokes about her, right? I don't want to say them on here. I don't know if any of them are appropriate for Shaw TV, but no, definitely. You have to come watch me somewhere in the city if you want to hear those jokes. But
I have a question. Okay, I have performance anxiety. I'm not public. I can do public speaking. I can give a very serious speech. Can anyone tell a joke?
absolutely anyone can tell a joke, right? And a lot of it's based off personal experiences and personal opinions. There is a process of writing jokes. We call it the writing process. Actually, I'm doing this thing with our Rotarian clubs where I'm teaching them to be comedians. And if I can teach a Rotarian to be a comedian, I'm sure I can teach anyone to be a comedian.
Sign me up.
All right, we'll make that happen. Absolutely.
My son tells me I'm laughable often. See, that was a joke. Anyway.
We'll work on it. We can work on that, Dana. Yeah, definitely. Maybe we get your son up there and see what he can do. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's just a writing process to it. We all follow it. I mean, there's no rules to comedy, right? So it's hard to say, like, this is how you write a joke, because, I mean, jokes can be made just with an expression, right? And like sometimes a punchline is a look on someone's face or the way they kind of move their body in some regard. So there is no real rule to it, but there is a guideline to help people understand what is funny, right? Like usually people will be like, my friends tell me I'm funny, so I can go tell jokes. And then they'll go on stage and they'll tell this insider story that nobody knows that is funny to their friends, but not necessarily funny to people that don't know what's going on, right? Because they feel that the basis of the story in and itself is a joke, where that doesn't really hit when you're on stage. You need to have a punchline to it, right? It's more than just a premise.
Well, my question to you, does it feel really good to get a laugh?
Oh, it's the best. Alternatively, when you tell a joke and get no laughs, it's horrible. I've been on stage a few times, and everybody who's done comedy has what they say bombed. It happens.
Heckled?
You get heckled, not as much as you'd believe. Yeah, most of because a lot of the shows we run are open mics, and when you're coming to an open mic, it's like watching an amateur anything performance, right? So for you to get out there and start heckling someone that's trying to tell jokes and trying to that's putting themselves out there in front of, it's kind of mean to heckle somebody in that regard. So you usually see the hecklers more at pro shows. Those are people who have paid to get in to see a comedian that's a professional. Then for whatever reason, they're not enjoying the show or they didn't like a particular bit and they feel the need to step up. But I tell you this, never heckle someone with a microphone. They have the microphone, they have the power, right? They have the attention on them. You're just a face in the crowd. So I'm getting pretty good. I could shut down the few hecklers I've had. I've made them feel that maybe they shouldn't heckle anymore.
It's a learning experience for everyone. So what is it about Lethbridge that you think is unique and can uplift the community as with regard to comics and laughter?
I live here. Yeah, I live here, and this is where I do comedy. So, wherever I lived, I'd be doing comedy there. I mean, Lethbridge is just like every other city in and around. I mean, we're not as big as a lot of cities where you would see most of the comedy scenes. I would have to say we are probably one of the smallest communities in Canada that has an active comedy scene in it, right? Where we have, like I said, we have about 8 comics that I would all consider between the amateur and professional level. That they're no longer just open micers, they're available to go do 20-minute sets for opening headliners here, there, and other places. And then we have another plethora, like 10, 15, 20 comics that come out on the regular basis that do the open mics, and they're very much still amateurs. But we do have a good nucleus. We have a comedy page on Facebook that everybody gets together, saying, hey, shows are happening here. Hey, I have an idea for this. We run workshops at good times where we all come and just kind of help each other get better at jokes and improve upon that, which I would have to say is the most unique thing about Lethbridge. Right? When you go to those big cities, it's dog eat dog. It's you are on your own. You might have a couple buddies that kind of work together, but the whole community, the whole scene isn't tight-knit like we have here in Lethbridge. So,
thank you so much. I'm so excited that you're here and doing this, and thanks for coming to Lethbridge Living.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. Rick, thank you so much for coming to Lethbridge Living. Thanks for not only this time, but the article you've written for this current issue of Lethbridge Living. So tell me a little bit about your background and what inspired you to write that article.
Okay, well, I've been a wildlife photographer for about the last 10 years or so. I've traveled fairly extensively from the Greater Yellowstone area up to the subarctic to Alaska and even over to Japan, photographing and filming wildlife. And about 3 years ago, I started to move more into video and put together a documentary called Wildlife of the Old Man River Valley. And that was screened at the Nature Center a couple of years ago. And following one of the screenings, a friend of mine came to me and said, well, that's great, but you didn't include the marmots. And I said, what marmots? So apparently there's a colony of marmots that has lived at the country club for at least the last 40 years. But it's probably one of the best kept secrets in Lethbridge because not a lot of people know about it. So my friend was able to introduce me to the general manager down there, and through conversation with him, I was able to spend part of last summer down there filming the marmots and doing some interviews with the staff.
Wow. And my question is, how is a marmot specific, unique from a gopher? And I mean, when someone said you didn't mention the marmots, I would go, well, I don't know anything about gophers, and they would. How are they different or unique?
Well, they're a little more unique than the ground squirrels because they hibernate for about 8 months of the year. I think the ground squirrels probably hibernate more in the neighborhood of 6 months out of the year, kind of thing. So their life cycle is very short compared to some of the other ground squirrels and that kind of thing. Again, it's all dependent upon disease and predation and that kind of thing. But they're only above ground for 4 or 5 months of the year. And the rest of the time they're hibernating.
And they're on the golf course.
They're on the golf course, yeah. I think particularly on hole 18. So if you haven't already, messed up your game by then, there's a good chance that you probably will be distracted by the marmots, I guess.
Well, I think it's beautiful. In the article that you wrote, you talked about this site being a space of coexistence with the natural. And so in your experience as a wildlife filmmaker and photographer, how often does that occur?
Well, it's one of those things where, to me, it's sort of a glimmer of hope, because when you take a look at the, what's happened over the last 50 years, wildlife populations, according to the World Wildlife Fund, have diminished by around 60% worldwide. And when you take a look at the global populations of humans within that same time period, our population has more than doubled. So we're over 6 billion people now, and of course with an increasing population, we need to take more of the natural world for cities, for agriculture, for infrastructure, those kind of things. So that typically has an impact, an adverse impact on the wildlife in those particular areas. And when you take a look at Lethbridge, we're not a lot different. The river valley is a wildlife corridor. And when you take a look at what we have down there for amenities, we have 3 golf courses, we have 2 firing ranges, we have a variety of baseball diamonds, dog runs down there, as well as public places, playgrounds and picnic shelters and those kind of things. So we do use a lot of the river valley, and typically we're not very good at sharing. So we seem to think that this is ours and that the animals will just go wherever they need to go. So getting back to your question about why it's so special for the country club to be in this kind of a situation, I think it speaks volumes to their willingness to work towards creating an environment where animals are welcome. As I said in the article, they have all kinds of animals that wander through there, from deer and marmots to moose and cougars. There was a cougar sighting last year down there. So there's some very special animals that are coming through in these areas, and for them to be able to provide habitat for some of these species to be able to live, I think is pretty cool.
Well, thank you so much for your contribution to the magazine and
Well, thank you. My pleasure.
and sharing your knowledge. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Matsim Hopua. Anotagutsi pui Pugagni testa Watsimopi.
Ma aki kuan o pita piisi. Sitten on pita piisi. Miksi maksiksi? Utakin tämä tapa eistä matsukeeksi. Pukeeksi niitä estävät hapia. Omia keisää kestiitsää napsisi. I toista matsaa ja matakin tapaa mii. Kimmataapi. Siis käpuat, stäns mä teitä paupa. Och mä matamomaisa mistä tukitsuupaks kaikki tapaa ihtsuusi. Ei sinä supi teepä pauako. Och niin mä tsitsi äkäisä pojaa piujuuppa. Moi äkäistä mii itä pauako. Pakit se itse omaksi pukaa miuppa. Ja moi manniksi stani matupaweista matsuuts. Annikaakin kanekkinä piikaa kääkäiksemistä tuuppa. Mä taakastiskin juuppa. Mä tsitania mä pukaa. Sä juppaa puaa koki. Äkäisitsipssä tää kääkäinkin kutuu. Puhuken hamakattutsematta piipujouppaa. Mä puhukaa veitsisi, ei puhukaa miukki. Äkitapskskan joukui niin tuissi. Omiksi niin syömiksi ja mantsistaa, miksi omiksi päin. Tuksipistaaniksi. Tukskamma akanista äkitapsi iskskan jou kimma piipitsini. Anje niitä puuttu tämä piivahkaista matsasi mä puhukaa kimma piipitsini. Ookin jääkatsitsi näinneemmät stika äkätsustitsi puju pannikaak. Maksksini si miajiinitstaksin äksiksi kiitsip. Mä puhukaa väiksikimma outu itse katau. Anja ihtesksini minä. Ooki kistunnuna matsitsitsio. Äkouka muuta puutakiu. Aamuja keiksi kiitsip, äkeineitsip, niin päätä piisini. Miksi stoe anja iimat teistä matsamaa puukau. Anni makanistista vaasini. Oot maksi kimma piipit, sen tohanniskeen niitä puuttu tämä piu. Kimma piipitsini. Oot kähkouka kiusataksi. Stikiksahka ikimassa. Kistunnuna iksistä suupi, suupi. Äkei niitsistä ei aueista matsei kokoosinnuniksi. Kistunnuna niitä ei peitä piupenia ihteessä puuja. Miksi suhtauista matsaa ja kistunnuna äkei sukaa piikitä kipeitä piuksinnu. Ooki omia jääkatsit omajat pissaista tuksipistoupa. Muksi vatsita pissimä puukaa uutuista kannajai miuksistista puutsi ja kenhan ei matsitsitska muksia tuksipistaaniksi ihkä ne puutiski pistä ja aamuska eistä matsahka ihkä ne puutsi ja ihtä ei pumikkaa piu päitä piukso. Ooki matsitsitsi mujakin uutta kohtsi. Injua otukiiksi mun issäni on. Äkitapskskan juupaatsi muiskaani. Nää tuapii. Aamuskai niitä pattu tutama piakskan ahkeista matsahsamsta puukaa mahkatsi muiskaani. Maksin neitaks, niin maksin niitsisi, niin päätä piisi. Käymui matsisitsi mä puukauakin teisit psaki. Akesksee puutsi tsipsata. Miuhteitsi niinku pi akuhkatskitsi nikua. Ihtesknim aistiusi. Ukekin teissä puhutsis, että akuhkua akitanikki. Kenniukai akatskaista matsakistunnuna. Ihtesknim aistiusi. Essamma ja Esapi tsuhkiapiks sataya kiaksistikskiakataya tukskeessistitaimiopia awan atsimmaya. Mui okakiusat kiau. Okessam kiau. Muja kita peitä piiau. Ihtesksinimiau eikin maksau. Aamui niitä poutu itsekatapia ajakikininna ja okehpi itein kutua ja annistska ihtesksinimiau ustua vai jutuutu tämä pissau. Okentokai aamui ikatskohtikin matsastutuut panohka läpi kueksi toutuksen ja itse puuttuukin ja myös siitä skinimastukiopisi. Sota mitsi atstupa kuukunnon niin ohkan sitä pei isinässä oppi. Kävasis kein kahsinoniksi kristunnoniksi mansteisinässä ja matkakka itsiuesta kennokai kistunnon amstokis kukuusinnon kitsistä pussukuusinnoniksi. Ihtukanaisinä ja onniskaakin itsistä vatspimisti napiitäskini matstukiupist matskini meiksau. Manisi uututama pihpi kimma piipitsini oikeahkautu itsekatasi kukuusinnon eksahkas pukapeita piimaksau. Sulta mitsitsio napiohki ikutoksisto tuhsu puukennohkaamaska ousukitsista pist matsi akatoutstia kukuusinnoniksi tout sauhkututu itsekatasa ite ikumoutitskutamistuttuukiin uukimuistuskousukitsista piks kukuusinnoniksi sulta mitsi puuttuesta mitä piksistä saa. Matatukista matsaueksi uukemuukis mannuksista siksi matskaksi nimseiksi ja mahkukanistuttu itsekatapia ukuusuaueksi. Aamuska makapiska sitä mitä puuma on iipiajau. Kianchikajan nukkaakin suhsi samstuhkaa sitä pia. Kukuusinnoniksi toutumuut peui taista pipiasaa. Kennohka kaarsinnoniksi ne matskakannisti puuttuu kiveeksi. Aamuskin matskakapanistiksi staueksi akannisti iipeitä piusi annohka. Annohkissuht. Kokemista puukau. Niksi otsita piimiksi. Anime ei tukaneita pitsi manstaakista vaas. Pennikaa kiuhtaaksuksista vaas. Unnikjuksis imakiitsita piisimi umpaksimmun on nuhkajakaska piimoki. On nuhkajakaista auesta matsiihpi. Ukikistunona kaarsinoniksi enchkakki anniskei kukuusinoniksi akuhkatsinno uhkuta ja mahkuhkeitsita piinchkaasimsa. Aamus niistä keikkiahpikaapi paskaan jahkuhkeita pipiaksau akiteenimia kipeitä piusinnon niin ei taami peitä piupi. Niin joukaa tsemuikaan jahkauista matsaksau akohpukoa tsemuikaama ja amatuusimaan jakaista matsaa ja kenniskaak niistä uhtaaksi pumikkaa pihku peitä piu. Se on yksi kiikoeksi mahkanista waakiupi. Piukmeukis sahkumaa piiks kunnaasina manista peisina speniskei mahkukaiweista matsaksa. Niitä puuttu tämä piu ahkaistiuasi maa puukau. Ahkaitsini kuutsiima. Suustea kuhatsiteitsini kuuki ahkaistua. Kennisiä kutei puutsi tsipsata.
Thank you for spending time with us at Lethbridge Living. For more of our articles, please visit our website at lethbridgeliving.ca. Until next time, I'm Dana Inkster, and this is Lethbridge Living.